Did you know? Top scientists measured incredible progress in 30 highly trained national-level athletes just from having them use EMS, that is, electrical muscle stimulation, before their workouts.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
It really is. So if you care about swearing faster, or honestly, if you play any sport and you just want to get better at it, this deep dive is for you. We are looking at a fascinating batch of sources today.
Right, some really heavy-hitting stuff.
Exactly. We've got a breakdown from a sports science blog and a highly rigorous peer-reviewed paper published in the journal Sensors. And it's worth pointing out right away that this journal is published by MDPI.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah, they are a top Swiss scientific publisher known for an incredibly strict review process.
Oh, totally. And the rigor of that review process, I mean, it really shines through in the methodology of this study.
Correct.
The research we're digging into comes out of Fudan University in Shanghai. They have this leading research center with a long, highly respected scientific tradition. And the core of what they were trying to understand is, well, conceptually simple. But biologically, it's incredibly complex when you look under the hood.
Right, so the central question the Fudan researchers wanted to answer was basically this. Could adding NMES, which stands for neuromuscular electrical stimulation, could that make a swimmer's freestyle kick not just stronger, but fundamentally smarter?
Further, yes, that's the key word.
And they didn't just grab a bunch of amateurs or, college freshmen to test this on. They recruited 30 national-level male freestyle swimmers. We are talking about guys with over 10 years of intense competitive experience.
Yeah, their bodies are already highly tuned machines.
Exactly.
And the physical baseline of those athletes is exactly what makes the findings published in this top Swiss scientific journal so compelling. I mean, they set up this 12-week intervention.
12 weeks.
Right. And they split these elite athletes into two groups. Half of them, the control group, they just continued their standard grueling water resistance training.
Which means what exactly?
That meant getting in the pool and doing maximal freestyle kicking sprints while wearing short-bladed fins. Just brutal, all-out effort.
Yeah.
But the experimental group received this tiny, almost bizarre addition to that routine. They received just 3 minutes of NMES on dry land, lying on their backs, immediately before they jumped into the pool to do that exact same water training.
Just 3 minutes. See, that is the part that immediately caught my attention. How could a 3-minute addition possibly move the needle for athletes who are already training for hours and hours every single day?
Sounds impossible, right?
It really does. 3 minutes of static electricity sounds like a drop in the ocean. What exactly is this machine doing to them on the pool deck before they even touch the water?
Well, it's doing a lot.
Okay, let's unpack this. Is this basically like preheating the oven before baking? Or is the electricity doing the actual heavy lifting? Like, is it building muscle mass in 3 minutes? Or is something else happening here?
No, it is definitely not building muscle mass. What's fascinating here is, well, to understand what it's doing, we have to look at the specific parameters the researchers used. They placed the stimulation pads on 3 very specific muscles in the legs.
Okay.
The vastus medialis and vastus lateralis, which are those large muscles on the inner and outer front of your thighs, and the biceps femoris, a major part of the hamstring on the back of the leg.
So the big power engines of the leg.
Exactly. And then they ran a 50 hertz frequency current with a 200 microsecond pulse width right through those pads.
Okay, which means what in plain English?
Yeah.
Is this like a gentle vibrating massage just to warm them up?
Oh, not at all. That combination of frequency and pulse width, set to an intensity of about 80 to 90% of what the athlete can physically tolerate, it creates a severe, highly visible, involuntary muscle contraction.
Wow.
Yeah, we call these tetanic contractions. The electricity is directly stimulating the motor nerves from the outside. It is entirely independent of the central nervous system.
Okay, wait. Normally, if I want to kick a soccer ball or swim a lap, my brain is the general, right? It sends an order down the chain of command through my spinal cord to the muscles, telling them to fire.
Exactly. That chain of command is exactly how voluntary movement works. And the human body is inherently conservative with how it deploys its troops, so to speak.
What do you mean by conservative?
By default, your brain recruits your smaller, slow-twitch muscle fibers first. It only calls in the heavy artillery, the massive, energy-hungry, fast-twitch type 2 fibers, when you absolutely demand it.
Like during a full-out sprint.
Right, or a life-or-death situation. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism to hoard energy. Your brain is essentially biologically lazy.
That makes sense. So if the brain is a general who prefers to send in the regular infantry first to save resources, what does the NMES machine do? Is it like a rogue commander bypassing the general and radioing the special forces directly?
That is a brilliant way to conceptualize it, yes. The electrical stimulation completely reverses the body's natural recruitment order.
Oh, wow.
Because of the physical properties of the electrical current, it bypasses the brain's conservative chain of command and forces those high-threshold type 2 fibers, your special forces, to fire immediately and repeatedly.
So it's effectively acting as a neuromuscular primer.
Yes, exactly. So what happens after 3 minutes? The athlete stands up, and their nervous system has been shoved into a state of heightened excitability.
They're totally primed.
Right. Those massive, powerful muscle fibers are awake, chemically primed, and forced to the front of the line right as the athlete dives into the pool for their specific sport task.
You are basically forcing the biggest engines to idle at maximum capacity before your race even starts. That is fascinating.
It's a huge advantage.
But proving that this actually translates to better performance in the water seems like a massive leap. I mean, it's one thing to measure a muscle twitching on a dry massage table in a perfectly controlled laboratory, but trying to measure the exact electrical activity of muscles while national-level athletes are sprinting at maximum effort, completely submerged in a pool while wearing fins.
Yeah.
That sounds like a complete logistical nightmare. Mixing precision electronics and splashing water usually ends poorly.
Oh, it is an incredibly hostile environment for data collection. To prove their hypothesis, the researchers had to capture the exact electrical firing of the muscles in the water.
How do they even do that?
They used wireless underwater surface electromyography sensors, or SEMG for short. These units have an IP68 waterproof rating.
Which means they can go completely underwater.
Right, they can survive full submersion, but simply having a waterproof sensor doesn't solve the problem of keeping it attached to a human body moving violently through water.
Yeah, I mean, if I put a Band-Aid on and jump in a pool, it peels off in about 10 seconds. How in the world did they keep medical sensors attached to the thighs and hamstrings of professional swimmers doing max-effort sprints?
It required a multi-layered, highly intensive waterproofing protocol before the athletes could even get near the water.
I bet.
First, the researchers had to shave the specific areas on the athlete's legs completely bare to remove any physical barrier. Then, they scrubbed the skin with alcohol wipes.
Get rid of the oils.
Exactly, to strip away any natural body oils that might compromise the adhesive. After that, they applied the 𝒊𝒏𝒔𝒐𝒓𝒔 surface electrodes. But, to your point about the Band-Aid, the drag from the water rushing past the leg would rip those right off.
So they essentially had to laminate the athlete's legs.
Essentially, yes. They covered the electrodes completely with a specialized waterproof medical tape called Tegaderm.
Wow, okay.
And as a final measure to combat the sheer physical drag of the water during the kicking sprints, they wrapped a specialized, tight, elastic mesh sleeve around the entire thigh just to hold everything securely in place.
The dedication to the data is unbelievable. And to capture the actual physical movement to pair with that electrical data, they had high-speed GoPro cameras, right?
Yes, recording at 200 frames per second underwater.
They needed that massive frame rate just to capture the exact fractions of a second that make up a single kick cycle, like the upward swing of the leg, the violent downward kick, and that tiny transition phase at the bottom.
The synchronization between those cameras and the sensors is the backbone of the entire study. You have to match the invisible electrical firing happening inside the muscle perfectly to the visible movement of the leg on camera.
Because if it's off by even a tiny bit...
If it's off by even a few milliseconds, you can't tell which part of the kick caused the muscle to fire, and the data becomes entirely useless.
Okay, so they have this incredibly elaborate underwater sensor rig firmly attached to the swimmers.
Sure.
What exactly are these sensors looking for? When I read the paper, it focused heavily on two metrics, EMG and RMS. Can we break those down?
Of course. The researchers were capturing the electrical output of the muscles to understand how hard they were working. EMG stands for integrated electromyography. In biomechanics, this is a measurement of the cumulative electrical activity of the muscles over a specific defined period of time. It tells us the total amount of physiological work or energy the neuromuscular system is mobilizing during that kick cycle.
Let me try an analogy here to make sure I'm following. If we think of the athlete's muscle as a fire hose, is EMG basically measuring the total volume of water flowing through the pipe over a minute?
That perfectly captures the concept, yes. It is the total volume of effort. The second metric they tracked was RMS, which stands for root mean square.
And how is that different?
While EMG looks at the total volume over time, RMS indicates the sheer intensity of the muscle activation at any given moment. It reveals the synchronized discharge of the motor units.
So to stick with the fire hose analogy, if IEMG is the total volume of water in the bucket at the end, RMS is how fiercely and rapidly that water is bursting out of the nozzle at any specific fraction of a second. It's the pressure.
The pressure is a great way to think about it. And high RMS is heavily correlated with the recruitment of those big, powerful, fast-twitch muscle fibers we talked about earlier. When the researchers sync all this data up, the results were incredibly stark.
Yeah, I saw the graphs in the paper. The NMES group, the guys who got that 3-minute Rogue Commander electrical primer on dry land, they showed significantly higher IEMG and RMS values in those key lower limb muscles once they were in the water.
Across the board.
During both the upward swing and the downward kick phases, their muscles were simply firing with far more cumulative volume and way more intensity than the control group who only did the standard water training.
The electrical primer worked exactly as hypothesized. It woke up the special forces, and those muscles went into the pool, firing harder and faster. But this brings us to a really crucial crossroad in sports science.
Why is that?
Because simply having muscles fire harder does not automatically equate to being a better athlete.
Hold on. Why not? If my muscles are firing with more power, shouldn't I just naturally swim faster?
Think about what would happen if I hooked you up to a car battery and sent a massive jolt of electricity to every single muscle in your legs simultaneously.
I would probably jump out of the pool.
Right. Your muscles would fire with immense power, but you wouldn't glide through the water. You would just violently thrash around in one spot. Uncoordinated power creates drag, not speed.
Right. If you press the gas pedal to the floor but the steering wheel is spinning wildly, you were just going to crash.
Exactly.
Efficiency and technique matter just as much as raw power. Which brings us to the concept from this Fudan University study that absolutely blew my mind. They used all this data to analyze something called muscle synergy.
Muscle synergy is where the real breakthrough of this study lies. They analyzed this using something called an NMF algorithm. To grasp why this matters, we have to look back at how your central nervous system operates.
The brain is the general again.
Exactly. We mentioned the brain as the general, but the brain does not micromanage every single muscle fiber independently. If it tried to consciously control the millions of fibers required for a complex movement, like an elite freestyle kick, it would require too much computational power. Your brain would overload.
So how does it manage the movement without micromanaging?
It simplifies motor control by grouping muscles together into pre-programmed modules. These modules are the synergies.
So it is essentially like programming macros on a computer keyboard. Instead of typing out 50 individual commands, you press one button and the system executes a whole prepackaged sequence of muscle contractions automatically.
That macro analogy is spot on. And through this incredibly complex underwater data collection, the researchers identified that the freestyle kick is governed by three main synergies, or macros.
Okay, what are they?
Synergy 1 is heavily focused on the calf muscles, specifically the gastric medius. Synergy 2 is essentially a postural adjustment module.
Postural meaning keeping you balanced.
Right. It heavily features your core and the tibialis anterior, which is the muscle right on the front of your shin. Its main job is keeping the body aligned and stable in the water. And finally, Synergy 3 is the big engine.
The power source.
Yes, it is the core propulsion module, driven by those massive upper leg muscles, the vastus medialis, vastus lateralis, and the glutes.
Here is where it gets really interesting. After the 12-week intervention, they compared the muscle synergies of the control group to the experimental group. And the finding that completely shocked me was that the number of basic movement patterns, these synergy modules, stayed exactly the same between both groups.
It's fascinating.
It's not like the electrical stimulation caused the athletes' bodies to invent a magical fourth synergy or a completely alien way to kick. Both groups still used the exact same three basic macros.
The total number of macros didn't change, but the internal architecture of those macros changed dramatically for the NMES group. The actual movement pattern was fundamentally rewritten.
How does a pattern get rewritten if the basic modules are the same? I'm trying to wrap my head around this without just falling back on a cliche like they use the same ingredients to bake a different cake. What physically changed in their biomechanics?
We have to look at the weighting and the timing within the synergies. The researchers found a massive shift in how the nervous system distributed the workload.
Okay.
Within Synergy 3, that main propulsion module we talked about, the vastus medialis and the biceps femoris, the massive muscles around the thighs and hips, they gained significantly greater weight. The nervous system decided to rely on them much more heavily to generate raw force.
Wow.
But the real magic happened in Synergy 2.
Synergy 2 is the postural one, right? The one that uses the shin muscle to stabilize the body.
Correct, the tibialis anterior.
Hmm.
In the NMES group, the activation duration of Synergy 2 became noticeably shorter and less active. The actual muscle weight of that shin muscle within the macro decreased.
It did less work.
Exactly. In biomechanics, we describe this specific shift as moving toward a pattern of proximal reinforcement distal optimization.
Okay, let's translate that medical terminology for everyone listening. Proximal basically means closer to the center of the body, like your hips and thighs. Distal means further away from the center, like your shins and ankles.
That distinction is crucial. The powerful proximal muscles around the hips and thighs took over the heavy lifting. That is the proximal reinforcement.
And the distal optimization.
Meanwhile, the distal muscles down by the ankle optimized their function by doing something completely counterintuitive. They relaxed. The shin stopped fighting the movement.
That makes so much sense when you think about the physics of moving through water. If you are kicking and your ankle is stiff and heavily flexed because that shin muscle is firing, your foot acts like dragging a flat plank of wood through the water. It creates a massive amount of drag.
The drag is the absolute enemy of speed in swimming. It forces the swimmer to burn vital energy just fighting their own body mechanics.
But by relaxing the ankle and driving all the force from the hips and thighs, the NMES athletes created what the study calls a whiplash, or whip kick mechanism.
It's beautiful to watch, honestly.
I bet. If the hip generates massive power and the ankle is loose and relaxed, the energy travels down the leg and snaps at the foot, exactly like a whip. It is incredibly fluid. And the underwater sensors prove that just 3 minutes of electrical stimulation on land fundamentally train their nervous systems to execute this whip kick better in the water.
That whip kick mechanic is the core of the drag reduction. The body learned to stop wasting precious energy tensing the shin for stability, and instead poured all that newly available neural drive directly into the thighs for propulsion. It is a profound reorganization of muscle coordination.
I have to push back here, though, because this is the part that is really tripping me up. I refuse to believe these national-level guys were just sloppy kickers before this study. Their bodies were already elite.
Oh, without a doubt.
They have spent an average of over 10 years swimming up and down pools, refining this exact motion for hours a day. You would think their nervous systems had already figured out the absolute most efficient way to kick. How in the world did 3 minutes of static electricity teach them something that 10 years of professional coaching and thousands of hours in a pool couldn't?
That is the exact question this study forces us to confront, and it gets to the heart of how our nervous systems plateau. It is not that these athletes were sloppy, it is that their brains had found a pattern that was good enough.
Good enough, but not perfect.
Right. When you repeat a movement for 10 years, your central nervous system encodes a highly stable motor program. It gets stuck in a rut of its own efficiency. The brain continues to prefer Synergy 2 tensing the shin because subconsciously the brain prioritizes postural stability in the water to prevent drowning over maximum hydrodynamic speed.
So the brain is protecting them from sinking at the cost of going faster.
Precisely. And breaking a 10-year neurological habit using just conscious thought is almost impossible. But the NMES disrupts that plateau.
By shocking the system.
Exactly. By externally forcing those powerful thigh muscles into a state of extreme excitability before the athlete hits the water, the brain is suddenly handed a completely different sensory landscape.
Oh, I see.
The brain says, wait, these massive proximal muscles are fully primed and ready to go. I don't need to rely on the shin for stability anymore. I can let the ankle relax. The electrical stimulation shatters the neurological plateau, allowing the brain to rapidly encode a new, superior movement pattern.
So what does this all mean for the listener right now? How does an electro-zapped Chinese swimmer relate to someone listening who just wants to improve their weekend tennis serve, or shave a few seconds off their 5K running time, or even just improve their own local laps in the pool? The average person isn't going to set up a multi-layered waterproof sensor rig on their leg. How does this research impact everyday athletic performance?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this study published in MDPI provides incredibly rigorous evidence for an entirely new frontier in athletic training.
Not just for swimmers.
No, for any athlete. For a long time, NMES was primarily viewed as a rehabilitation tool. You would see it in physical therapy clinics to keep muscles from atrophying after a knee surgery. But this research proves it is a potent, active performance enhancer when used correctly. And the secret is the pairing.
Because it is not just about passively sitting on a couch and zapping the muscle. It is about what you do immediately after the machine turns off.
The immediate application is everything. By pairing the NMES directly with water-based resistance training, or really any sport-specific physical training method, you are creating a dual intervention.
A dual intervention.
Think of it as a two-pronged attack on your physical limits. The electrical stimulation handles the peripheral nervous system. It bypasses the brain, forces the muscles to recruit the high-powered fibers, and boosts the sheer physical capacity of the tissue.
And then the second prong is the physical practice.
Right. The physical training that immediately follows handles the central nervous system. It ensures that while the muscles are in this artificially heightened state of excitability, the brain is actively practicing the specific movement pattern of your sport.
It is essentially teaching the brain to coordinate its physical resources with far greater efficiency. You are giving the brain a much louder, stronger set of instruments and then immediately forcing it to practice the symphony so it learns how to conduct them properly.
That is a wonderful analogy. And because the central nervous system is highly adaptable when presented with new stimuli, it learns this new efficient pattern, that proximal reinforcement we talked about, and permanently encodes it.
Wow.
It learns that it doesn't need to tense the unnecessary muscles, which translates to a better tennis swing, a more efficient running stride, or a faster swim kick.
That is absolutely wild. If 10-year veterans of a highly competitive sport can find a completely new gear just by waking up their nervous system differently for 3 minutes, the untapped potential in the rest of us must be absolutely staggering.
It is a deeply humbling realization for anyone involved in sports science, and it raises an important question that I think everyone listening should really ponder as they go about their day.
What's that?
What physical limitations do we experience in our own bodies, in sports, in our hobbies, or even in our daily mobility that aren't actually limits of our physical strength, but simply software limits of our nervous system?
That's a great point.
Right. How many of the plateaus we hit are just our brains settling for a good enough pattern and refusing to coordinate the physical resources we already possess?
That is a fascinating and deeply encouraging thought to leave on. The limit might not be your muscles at all. It might just be the software running them. And with the right stimulus, that software can be upgraded. And just like that, we have to wrap up this deep dive. If you want to keep exploring breakthroughs like this, make sure to follow Health Research Digest on Facebook for more health research papers that we reveal.
There is always more to learn and more potential to unlock when you look closely at the right data.
Absolutely. Just a quick disclaimer before we go. Our content is for informational and educational purposes only. It should not be taken as medical advice. Keep learning, keep pushing your limits, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.